Daeho Kim walked through the tall doors of the Galactic Council chambers. His black suit was simple and clean. His face showed no emotion. Behind him, two other humans followed. Sojin Park carried a small bag with important papers. 1-6. Lee wore his military uniform with quiet pride. The chamber was huge. It looked like the inside of a giant marble ball. 200 different alien species sat in floating chairs or on strange platforms. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal or metal. A few were just clouds of gas in glass containers. They all made different sounds when they talked. Clicks, hums, roars, and musical notes filled the air. Daeho had been coming to this place for 10 years. He was Earth's main speaker to the Council. Every time he came here, he felt small. Not because of the big room, but because of how the aliens looked at him. Like he was a child asking for candy from adults. Today felt different. Today was the last day he would ask for anything. High Chancellor Vexmoth sat on the highest platform. She looked like a giant spider, but with 6 arms instead of 8 legs. Her skin was purple and shiny. When she moved, her arms made gestures that meant she was important, and everyone else was not. Human delegation. Her voice came through the speakers in perfect English. The translation machines made sure everyone could understand everyone else. Humans had built those machines. You have requested this meeting. Speak your words. Daeho stepped forward to the center of the room. A small platform rose from the floor to lift him up. Even then, he was still shorter than most of the aliens around him. Honored Council, he began. His voice was calm and clear. For 300 years, humanity has worked with this council. We have solved your problems. We have shared our knowledge. We have helped build peace in this galaxy. Some aliens made sounds that might have been agreement. Others stayed silent. When the Vorthak Empire poisoned the Kepler systems, we created the machines that cleaned the air and water. Billions of lives were saved. The Vorthak delegate, a creature that looked like a walking tree, moved its branches in what might have been embarrassment. When the crystal people of Thylos could not talk to anyone else, our language expert Sojin Park made the translation system we all use today. Sojin stood a little straighter. She had spent 5 years of her life learning how crystals could think and speak. The work had been hard, but she did it to help. When space pirates attacked your trade ships, Admiral Wansik Lee created the patrol plans that stopped them. Trade routes that were dangerous for 50 years became safe in 2. Wansik said nothing. He just stood at attention like a good soldier. Daeho paused. The chamber was quiet now. Every alien was listening. We have asked for only one thing in return. A seat on this council, a voice in the decisions that affect all of us. Today we ask one last time. Will you give humanity a place at this table? High Chancellor Vexmoth's 6 arms moved in complex patterns. Other alien leaders made their own gestures or sounds. Daeho had seen this before. They were talking to each other without words, deciding what to say to the humans. After 5 minutes, Vexmoth spoke again. The answer is still no. Her words hit the air like stones dropping into water. Humans are useful, she continued. This cannot be denied. Your species has talents. You solve problems in ways we do not expect. You work hard. You do not give up. Easily. Some aliens made sounds that meant they agreed. But council membership requires more than usefulness. It requires proof of evolutionary superiority, proof of advanced thinking, proof of wisdom that comes from millions of years of civilization. Daeho felt something cold in his chest. Not surprised, he had expected this answer, but hearing it still hurt. Your species is only 50,000 years old. Most of us have existed for millions of years. You are children compared to us. Children who are smart and helpful, yes. But still children. Children are chaotic, added another voice. This came from a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. They change their minds. They make choices based on feelings instead of logic. They cannot be trusted with important decisions. Your wars, said a third voice from something that looked like a metal cube. You still fight each other. Species that deserve council membership have evolved beyond conflict. Daeho nodded slowly. He had heard all these arguments before. For 10 years, he had tried to answer them. He had shown examples of human wisdom. He had pointed to their peaceful cooperation with aliens. He had explained how young species often had new ideas that older species missed. Nothing had worked. "I understand," he said simply. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It was black and smooth, about the size of his hand. He placed it carefully on the speaker's platform in front of him. "What is this?" Vexmoth asked. "Everything," Daeho said. "Every piece of technology we shared with you. Every solution to your problems. Every cultural exchange. Every bit of knowledge and help we gave to this council. It is all in this device." The chamber became very quiet. Even the background hums and clicks stopped. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council partnerships, agreements, and aid programs, Daeho announced. His voice never changed. It stayed calm and professional. "We thank you for the opportunity to serve. We wish you well in your future." He turned around and began walking toward the exit. "Wait!" Vexmoth called out. "You cannot simply leave. There are contracts, obligations, projects that need finishing." Daeho stopped and looked back over his shoulder. "We fulfilled our part of every agreement. We never promised to stay forever. We are going home." "This is blackmail," shouted another alien. "You are trying to force us to give you what you want." "No," Daeho said quietly. "We are not forcing anything. We are not threatening anyone. We are just leaving." Behind him, Sojin and Wonsik followed. Their footsteps echoed in the huge chamber. No one tried to stop them. As they reached the doors, chaos erupted behind them. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. The translation system was overloaded, mixing words together into nonsense. Some delegates were demanding that the humans be arrested. Others were calling for emergency votes, but the 3 humans did not turn around. They did not run. They just walked through the doors at a normal pace, like they were leaving any ordinary meeting. In the hallway outside, Sojin finally spoke. "Do you think they will change their minds?" she asked. Daeho shook his head. "No, they think they are better than us. They will not understand until it is too late." Wonsik adjusted his uniform jacket. "How long do you think we have before they realize what they have lost?" "Not long," Daeho replied, "but long enough for us to go home and build something better." The 3 humans walked to their small ship. Within an hour, they were flying back toward Earth. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued to argue and shout. But for the first time in 300 years, no humans were listening. 6 months had passed since the humans left the council chambers. At first, most aliens thought they would come back. Humans were emotional creatures, they said. They would get angry, then cool down, then return asking for forgiveness. They were wrong. Dr. Yoonji Yoon had been working on the most important medical project in the galaxy. The Zarathi plague was killing thousands of people every day. It attacked the nervous system of any carbon-based life form. The Zarathi people were dying so fast that entire cities were becoming empty. Yoonji's laboratory was on the moon, orbiting Earth. She had been working with teams of alien scientists for 2 years. They were close to finding a cure. Very close. Maybe just weeks away from saving millions of lives. Then one morning, all the human scientists were gone. Dr. Kethvar of the Zarathi delegation tried calling Yoonji's personal communication device. No answer. He tried the emergency medical channels. No answer. He even tried flying to the moon laboratory himself. When his ship approached Luna's orbit, an automated message played in perfect galactic standard. "This facility is now closed. All human personnel have been transferred. Do not attempt to land. Please leave this area immediately." The laboratory building was still there. The lights were still on, but every human was gone, and the doors would not open for any alien access codes. Kethvar floated in his ship, staring at the building where the cure for his people's plague had been so close to completion. Without Yoonji and her team, the alien scientists could not continue the work. They did not understand the human research methods. The notes were written in ways that made sense to humans, but confused everyone else. On the planet below, thousands more Zarathi were dying every day. Captain Junho Ryu had been leading joint military exercises in the Outer Rim. Pirates and raiders had been getting bolder lately. Intelligence reports suggested that something big was coming. Maybe the return of the ancient devourers that the old stories warned about. The combined alien fleets needed to learn how to work together. They needed to practice formations and communication. They needed to be ready for any threat. Humans had been running these exercises for 50 years. Human tactical officers understood how to make different species work together. Vorthak war leaders were aggressive and wanted to charge straight at enemies. Thylorian crystal ships moved slowly but had powerful shields. Gas cloud beings could not be hurt by most weapons but could not hurt others either. Junho knew how to use each species' strengths and cover their weaknesses. His tactical plans had turned a collection of different alien fleets into a real fighting force. Then he received his orders from Earth. All human personnel are to return to Sol system immediately. Withdraw from joint operations. Close all military cooperation agreements. Sir, his aide asked, what about the exercises? The aliens are not ready to coordinate on their own. Junho looked at the tactical displays. Hundreds of alien ships, from dozens of different species, were trying to practice formation flying. Without human coordination, they looked like children trying to march in a parade. Ships bumped into each other. Some groups went too fast, others too slow. The communication systems kept breaking down. Not our problem anymore, he said quietly. Within 6 hours, every human ship had jumped to hyperspace, heading home. The alien fleets were left floating in space, confused and alone. General Vorthak of the Vorthak Empire tried to take command. Form attack formation, he ordered. Half the fleet did not understand his commands. The other half understood but disagreed with his tactics. Within minutes, 3 different species were flying in 3 different directions. 2 ships crashed into each other while trying to avoid a Thylorian crystal ship that was moving too slowly. The exercises fell apart completely, but the biggest problem was the translation system. So Jin Park had spent 10 years building the Universal Communication Network. It was not just a simple translator. It learned how each species thought and spoke. It understood cultural differences. It could translate not just words but meanings and feelings. The system needed constant maintenance. New species were always joining the council. Languages changed over time. Technical updates had to be installed. Cultural databases needed expanding. All of this work was done by human technicians. They understood the system because they had built it. They knew how to fix problems and add improvements. When the humans left, they took all their knowledge with them. At first, the translation system kept working. But slowly, problems began to appear. Conversations between Vorthak traders and Thylorian merchants started having misunderstandings. Words that meant one thing to crystal beings meant something completely different to tree creatures. Trade negotiations that should have taken days began taking weeks. Some deals fell apart completely because no one could understand what anyone else was really trying to say. Chancellor Vexmoth tried to call an emergency meeting to discuss the human situation, but when the delegates arrived, half of them could not understand each other clearly. Arguments broke out over simple misunderstandings. The meeting ended with 3 different species storming out, each thinking the others had insulted them. The team. Real crisis came when the Delian Republic tried to contact the human government directly. Ambassador Keltar was an experienced diplomat. He had worked with humans for 20 years. He considered Daeho Kim to be a personal friend. Surely he could reason with them. Surely they could work something out. His message was simple. The galaxy needs human help. We can discuss terms. Please, respond. The reply came from an automated system at the edge of Sol system. Human space is closed to alien traffic. This decision is final. Do not attempt to enter Sol system. Do not attempt further contact. Please adjust your course immediately. Keltar tried again. This time he sent personal messages to every human diplomat he had ever worked with. Dozens of messages asking for just a few minutes of conversation. No one answered. He tried official diplomatic channels. Nothing. He tried emergency medical channels claiming there was a health crisis that only humans could solve. The message bounced back undelivered. Finally, he tried flying to the edge of Sol system himself. Maybe if he could talk to them face to face, explain how much the galaxy needed their help. His ship never made it past Jupiter's orbit. A wall of defense satellites surrounded the solar system like a metal fence. When he tried to approach, warning signals filled his communication array. Turn back immediately. Human space is closed. This is your final warning. The satellites were not like any human technology he had seen before. They moved too fast and their weapon signatures were completely unknown. Keltar's ship computer could not identify what type of guns they carried, but it was sure they were powerful enough to destroy his vessel in seconds. He turned around and flew home. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council headquarters, panic was beginning to set in. 3 major trade routes had shut down because no one could translate the complex shipping agreements. Medical research on 5 different plagues had stopped because human scientists were gone. The joint military exercises had been canceled after 2 more ships crashed during a practice run. Chancellor Vexmoth called her advisors together. "How long can we manage without them?" she asked. "Trade will recover," said Economic Advisor Thelvan. "It will be difficult for a few years, but we can build new translation systems." "The military situation is more serious," admitted Defense. Coordinator Crix. "Our fleets cannot coordinate effectively without human tactical support. If there is a real threat, we will be in trouble." "And the medical research?" Vexmoth asked. Chief Science Officer Dr. Yelm hesitated. "Many projects will have to start over. The humans took all their data when they left. Years of work may be lost." Vexmoth's 6 arms moved in patterns of frustration and anger. "They are acting like children. This tantrum cannot continue forever." But as the months passed, it became clear that this was not a tantrum. The humans were not angry. They were not trying to punish anyone. They had simply left. Long range. Sensors detected massive construction projects around Earth and Mars. New space stations were being built. Shipyards were expanding. The humans were clearly working on something big, but they would not talk to anyone about it. Scout ships that got too close to human space were politely but firmly escorted away by vessels that no alien database could identify. The ships were sleek and fast, unlike the older human designs. They carried weapons that made sensor equipment stop working properly. When scouts tried to scan these new human ships, their instruments showed impossible readings, energy signatures that should not exist, materials that bent light in strange ways, propulsion systems that left no exhaust trail. "What are they building?" Vexmoth asked. No one could answer. The humans had walked away without speaking. Now they were building something in secret while the galaxy they left behind slowly fell apart, and still they would not answer any calls. 2 years had passed since humanity disappeared into their home system. What had started as small problems was now a disaster that threatened the entire galaxy. The war between the Kelthari Federation and the Vorthak Empire had been going on for 6 months. It started over a simple trade dispute about mining rights in the asteroid belt of Kepler 442. Before humans left, such problems were solved quickly using the conflict resolution protocols that Daeho Kim had written. The protocols were still there in the Council database, but no one understood how to use them properly. The carefully written steps required someone who understood both cultures deeply, someone who could see past the obvious anger to find the real problems underneath. Humans had been doing this job for so long that everyone forgot how hard it was. General Vorthak of the Empire believed that honor required direct action. When someone challenged Vorthak mining claims, the proper response was immediate military force. Waiting for negotiations was a sign of weakness. The Kelthari thought differently. Their crystal-based minds worked slowly but carefully. They saw the Vorthak attack as proof that tree people were too emotional and violent to be trusted. What should have been a simple legal discussion became a shooting war. The fighting spread across 17 star systems. Forthak attack ships were fast and aggressive. They hit hard and moved quickly. But Kelthari defensive platforms were nearly impossible to destroy. Their crystal armor could absorb enormous amounts of damage. Neither side could win, so they kept fighting. Millions of civilians fled their homes as battle fleets clashed around their planets. Refugee camps filled up on neutral worlds. Emergency supplies ran short. Disease spread in the crowded shelters. Before, when wars threatened civilian populations, humanity had run the galaxy's emergency response system. Human ships carried supplies to refugees. Human doctors treated the wounded. Human engineers built temporary shelters and power systems. Now those ships sat empty in Earth orbit. The refugee camps had no supplies. The wounded had no doctors. The homeless had no shelter. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vexmoth watched reports of suffering pour in from across the galaxy. Her advisors tried to organize help, but everything went wrong. The Thylorian relief ships are too slow, reported Aide, Coordinator Svental. By the time they reach the refugee camps, half the supplies will be spoiled. What about the Delian medical ships? Vexmoth asked. They cannot land on planets with different atmosphere. Their doctors can only treat gas-based life forms. The hegemony has offered engineering support, said another advisor. Their equipment is not compatible with civilian power systems. Nothing they build will work for the refugees. Every alien species had developed their technology for their own needs. Humans had been the ones who made everything work together. They built interfaces and adapters. They wrote translation software for different computer systems. They trained mixed crews who could operate alien equipment. Without humans, the galaxy's different technologies could not connect to each other. But the refugee crisis was small compared to what happened to galactic communication. Taemin Yu had spent 15 years building the FTL communication network that connected distant civilizations. It was not just a collection of radio transmitters. The network used quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across thousands of light years. The physics were incredibly complex. The engineering was even harder. Keeping the quantum states stable required constant adjustments and maintenance. The smallest error could break connections between entire sectors of the galaxy. Human technicians had been maintaining the network from a control center on Luna. When they left, they shut down the control systems and took all the technical manuals with them. For 6 months, the network kept working on automatic systems, but slowly quantum states began to drift out of alignment. Messages took longer to arrive. Some got scrambled or lost completely. The far rim territories stopped receiving council messages. They had no idea what was happening in the central systems. When trade ships arrived with news that was months old, local governors assumed they were being lied to or tricked. The Outer Colony Alliance declared independence from the council, claiming they had been abandoned. 3 other sector governments did the same thing. Without fast communication, the council could not even send messages to negotiate. Chancellor Vexmoth tried to hold emergency meetings with remaining member species, but half the delegates could not receive the meeting announcements. Others received them so late that they missed the meetings entirely. The galaxy that had been united for 1,000 years was falling apart into isolated fragments. The terraforming disasters were even worse. Inheye Seo had been the galaxy's greatest, expert on making dead worlds suitable for life. Her teams had transformed dozens of barren planets into garden worlds where millions of people could live. Terraforming was not simple. It required careful balance of atmospheric gases, precise control of weather patterns, and delicate management of engineered ecosystems. One mistake could poison a planet's air or water for centuries. 3 worlds in the Kepler sector had been in the middle of terraforming when humans left. The automated systems continued working for a while, but without human oversight, chemical reactions began going wrong. On New Paradise, the oxygen generators malfunctioned and began producing toxic chlorine gas instead. The atmosphere that should have supported human-like life became deadly to breathe. On Eden's Rest, the weather control systems went crazy. Massive storms raged across the continents without stopping. Hurricane-force winds stripped away the carefully planted forests. Flooding destroyed the growing cities. Verdant Hope suffered the worst fate. The genetic modifications that were supposed to create hardy plants went wrong. Instead of useful crops, twisted mutant vegetation began growing everywhere. The plants produced acids that ate through metal and concrete. Within months, the colonial infrastructure was dissolving. All three worlds became uninhabitable wastelands. Hundreds of thousands of colonists had to be evacuated. Years of work and billions of credits were lost. The alien scientists tried to fix the problems, but they did not understand Inha's methods. Her notes were written in human technical language that was almost impossible to translate. Her computer programs used human mathematical concepts that alien minds found confusing. Dr. Yelmoth, the Thylorian scientist trying to save New Paradise, spent weeks studying Inha's atmospheric control algorithms. "I can read the words," he reported to his supervisors, "but I cannot understand the thinking behind them. Human minds work in ways that crystal logic cannot follow." More terraforming projects were shut down before they could fail catastrophically. Dozens of worlds that had been scheduled to become new homes for growing populations remained lifeless, rocks floating in space. The economic damage was enormous, but the psychological damage was worse. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had been forced to admit they could not solve their own problems. Chancellor Vexmoth called her advisors for what everyone knew would be a critical meeting. "We must contact them," she announced to the sparse assembly. Many member species had stopped sending delegates to council meetings. They were too busy dealing with crises in their own territories. "Every attempt has failed," reminded Chief Diplomat Krenchtal. "They will not answer any communication. They escort away any ship that approaches their space." "Perhaps we were too hasty in rejecting their request," suggested Economic Advisor Thelvan carefully. "Maybe we could reconsider membership for humanity." Several delegates made angry noises. The idea of changing their minds was humiliating. "They are still a young species," insisted Military Coordinator Crix. "Nothing has changed about their evolutionary status." "Something has changed," Vexamoth said quietly. "We are failing without them. Our civilization is falling apart. Maybe age is not the only measure of wisdom." She activated the large display screen at the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with different colors marking political control. 2 years ago, it had been mostly one color representing the Council's unified authority. Now it looked like a shattered piece of glass. Different sectors were marked in dozens of colors representing independent governments, warring factions, and areas where communication had been completely lost. "Look what we have become," Vexmoth said. "Look what we are without them." The chamber fell silent. Even the most proud delegates could not argue with the evidence before them. Long-range sensors were still detecting massive construction projects in human space. The energy readings were growing stronger every month. Whatever the humans were, building it was big and powerful. Some scout ships reported glimpses of new human vessels at the edges of their territory. The ships were unlike anything in any alien database. They seemed to bend space around them as they moved. They left strange energy signatures that made no sense according to known physics. The humans were not just hiding. They were building something that the aliens could not understand. "What if they have learned things we do not know?" asked Science Advisor Dr. Pelm nervously. "What if their isolation has made them more advanced instead of weaker?" No one wanted to answer that question. The galaxy that had rejected humanity as too young and chaotic was now begging for their help. But the humans had stopped listening to Alien. 5 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Council. The galaxy that remained was broken and scared. Wars continued in dozens of systems. Trade had collapsed between many species. Entire sectors had lost contact with central government. Then, the ancient nightmare came back. The first warning came from a deep space monitoring station in the Void sector. Sensor operator Clixavan was ending his shift when his instruments began screaming alarms he had never heard before. Massive objects were moving through dark space between the stars. They were huge, bigger than space stations. They gave off no heat and no light. But they bent gravity around them like black holes. The objects were moving in formation, heading toward populated systems. Clixavan had studied the ancient records. Every galactic civilization kept stories about the Devourers, machines built by a dead race millions of years ago. Machines designed to consume entire worlds and use the materials to build more machines. The stories said they came every 100,000 years. They would sweep through the galaxy, eating planets and killing everything alive. Then they would disappear back into dark space, leaving empty systems behind. Most people thought the stories were just myths, old fears from primitive times. Clicksvan knew better. The energy signatures matched the ancient descriptions perfectly. He sent emergency messages to every government in the galaxy. The Devourers are real. They are coming. We have maybe 6 months before they reach the first populated systems. Panic spread through every civilized world. Chancellor Vexmoth called the first full council meeting in 2 years. Delegates who had been fighting each other for months suddenly remembered they had bigger problems to worry about. "How many ships can we gather?" she asked. Defense Coordinator Crix looked at his reports. The Vorthak Empire can provide 300 attack vessels. The Thylorian Collective has 150 crystal ships. The Delian Republic has 200 fast cruisers. "What about coordination?" asked Admiral Kyungsoo Park of the Thylorian fleet. "Can our forces work together?" Silence filled the chamber. Everyone remembered what had happened during the last joint exercises. Without human tactical officers, the different fleets could barely fly in the same direction, much less fight as a unified force. "We will manage," Vexmoth said, but her voice lacked confidence. The first Devourer scout machines appeared in the Outer Rim 3 weeks later. They attacked the mining colony on Ferris 7th without warning. The planet's defense platforms fired everything they had: energy beams and missile barrages that could destroy normal warships. The weapons had no effect. The Devourer machines absorbed the energy attacks and used them to power their own systems. The missiles simply bounced off armor that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Within 6 hours, Ferris 7 was gone. Not destroyed, consumed. The entire planet had been broken down into basic materials and absorbed into the Devourer fleet. Where a world with 3 million people had been, now there was only empty space and growing machines. More attacks followed. 12 worlds went silent in the first week. The Devourer fleet was growing larger as it consumed more planets. The combined alien fleets tried to stop them. Admiral Kyungsoo led the largest space battle in galactic history. Over 2,000 ships from 50 different species attacked the Devourer swarm in the Nexus sector. It was a disaster. The alien fleets could not coordinate their attacks. Vorthak ships charged forward while Thylorian vessels tried to form defensive walls. Delian fast attack ships flew in circles, unable to decide which targets to hit. Gas cloud beings could not hurt the machines at all, while their own ships were torn apart by weapons that attacked on quantum levels. Kyungsoo watched helplessly as his forces were systematically destroyed. The Devourers fought with cold efficiency. They did not make mistakes, they did not get tired. They learned from each attack and adapted their defenses. In 6 hours of fighting, the alien fleets lost 800 ships. The Devourers lost 3. "Fall back," Kyungsoo ordered. "All ships retreat to safe distance." But the retreat became a rout. Ships crashed into each other as they tried to escape. Others flew directly into Devourer weapons because their pilots could not understand the retreat orders in their own language. The translation system was failing under combat stress. The survivors limped back to Nexus Prime carrying terrible news. The most powerful military force the galaxy could assemble had been crushed easily. In the council chambers, emergency meetings continued around the clock. Delegates argued about strategies they did not understand using tactics they could not implement. "We need better ships," said some. "We need better weapons," said others. "We need better coordination," admitted Admiral Kyungsoo. But everyone knew the truth they did not want to say out loud. They needed humans. War leader Cleth of the Vorthak Empire was the first to break the silence. His people valued honor above. Pride and sometimes honor required admitting uncomfortable truths. "We need the human tactical database," he said. His voice was quiet but clear. "Their pattern analysis, their strategic algorithms. We are fighting blind without them." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Many delegates shouted that they could win without human help, that asking for help would be shameful, that humans were still too young to be trusted with galactic security. But as reports of more lost worlds came in, the arguments became weaker. 15. Worlds consumed. 20. 25. Finally, Chancellor Vexmoth made the decision that she knew would define her legacy. Send a message to Sol System, she ordered. Emergency diplomatic channel, highest priority. Chief Communication Officer Telrak composed the message carefully. Sol Defense Command, this is Galactic Council Emergency Channel. The Devourers have returned from dark space. They are consuming inhabited worlds. Billions of sentient beings have died. Trillions more are in immediate danger. He paused, looking at Chancellor Vexmoth for confirmation. Continue, she said quietly. Our military forces cannot stop them. We lack the tactical coordination and strategic planning capabilities that humanity provided. We need your help. We are requesting immediate military assistance and strategic consultation. Another pause. Please respond. Time is critical. More worlds are dying every day. The message was sent through the emergency broadcast system to every corner of human space. For 18 hours, there was no reply. Ships continued, disappearing. Long-range sensors detected the Devourer fleet moving toward more populated systems. At their current speed, they would reach the core worlds within 3 months. Then, without warning, a massive ship appeared at the edge of the battle zone. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. The hull was smooth and dark, but it seemed to bend light around it in strange ways. It was huge, easily the size of a small moon, but it moved through space like a fighter craft. The ship's energy signature was completely unknown. It gave off readings that made no sense according to any known physics. The vessel seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. Communication Officer Telrak's instruments went crazy as a signal came through on emergency frequencies. This is Captain Sujin Kang of the Terran Defense Corps. We have been monitoring your situation. Stand down your fleets and withdraw to safe distance. We will handle this. Admiral Kyung-soo stared at his tactical display in shock. Terran Defense Corps? What is that? The humans never had anything called that. Should we comply with their instructions? Asked his aide. Before Kyung-soo could answer, space around the Devourer fleet began to change. More human ships appeared. Dozens of them, each one different from anything in the alien databases. They moved in perfect formation with impossible precision, their weapons charged with energy signatures that made nearby asteroids start glowing. The humans had returned, but they were not the same humans who had left 5 years ago. These were something new, something more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and they were about to show the Devourers why humanity had never needed anyone's permission to be great. The battle lasted 6 hours, but it was not really a battle. It was a demonstration. Captain Sujin Kang's fleet moved through space like dancers performing a carefully planned routine. The human ships did not fly in straight lines like normal vessels. They curved through space, bending their paths in ways that should have been impossible. Admiral Kyung-soo watched from his command ship as the humans engaged the Devourer swarm. His sensors could barely track what was happening. The human vessels seemed to exist in several places at once. They would disappear from one location and instantly appear in another, thousands of kilometers away. How are they moving like that? His science officer asked. I do not know, Kyung-soo admitted. Our instruments cannot measure their propulsion systems. The human weapons were even more impossible to understand. They did not fire energy beams or launch missiles. Instead, they seemed to reach into space itself and change the basic rules of reality around their targets. Devourer machines that had easily absorbed all alien weapons began falling apart. Their armor, which had seemed invincible, started dissolving, like sugar in water. Their quantum shields, which had protected them from everything, simply stopped working. Engineer Yujin Ko spoke over the communication channel to her fleet. Targeting dimensional anchor points. Collapsing local space-time around enemy vessels. The words meant nothing to any alien listening, but the results were clear. Where Devourer machines had been floating in space, now there were only expanding clouds of basic particles. The ancient killing machines tried to adapt. They had defeated thousands of civilizations by learning from each attack and changing their defenses, but they could not adapt to weapons that attacked the foundation of reality itself. One by one, the Devourers were unmade, not destroyed, unmade, reduced to their component atoms and scattered across space. When the last machine fell silent, the human fleet did not celebrate. They simply began collecting useful materials from the debris field. Even their victory was efficient and practical. Incredible, whispered Admiral Kyung-soo. How did they become so powerful? Captain Soo-jin's voice came over the communication channel. We learned to think beyond your limitations. Chancellor Vexmoth could not wait for official diplomatic channels. She took her personal ship and flew directly to the human flagship. The massive vessel called New Seoul looked like a city floating in space. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. When she requested permission to dock, she expected to be refused. Instead, Captain Soo-jin invited her aboard personally. The inside of the ship changed everything. Vexmoth thought she knew about humanity. The corridors were larger than they looked from outside. The walls showed images of stars and nebulas, but the stars were moving in real time, showing views from across the galaxy. Gravity pointed in different directions in different rooms. Some hallways seemed to stretch infinitely in both directions. Welcome, aboard, said Captain Soo-jin. She looked human, but there was something different about her eyes. They seemed to see more than 3 dimensions. How is this possible? Vexmoth asked. This ship, this technology. 5 years ago, humans could not build anything like this. 5 years ago, we were trying to fit into your understanding of what was possible, Soo-jin replied. When we stopped doing that, we discovered what we were really capable of. She led Vexmoth to an observation deck. Through the transparent walls, Earth was visible in the distance, but it was not the Earth that any alien remembered. The planet was surrounded by structures that existed in impossible geometric shapes, space stations that looked like they were folded through several dimensions. Construction projects that seemed to be building upward into spaces that did not exist. What have you become? Vexmoth whispered. What we always were, said physicist Dongwoo Lim, who had appeared beside them without using any door. You just could not see it. He gestured toward the display screens around the observation deck. They showed images from across human space. Mars had been transformed into something that looked like a living crystal. The asteroid belt had been reorganized into geometric patterns that pulsed with energy. New space habitats floated in formations that followed mathematical rules beyond alien understanding. During our isolation, we stopped limiting ourselves to 3-dimensional thinking, Dongwoo explained. We learned to use the extra dimensions that exist in all space. We developed technology that works with the basic structure of reality instead of fighting against it. Engineer Yujin Ko joined the conversation. She was younger than Vexmoth remembered, but her eyes held knowledge that seemed ancient. We also made contact with ourselves in adjacent realities, Yujin said casually. Parallel versions of humanity that made different choices. We learned from their experiences and shared our own discoveries. Vexmoth's 6 arms trembled. You can travel between realities? Travel is the wrong word, Yujin replied. We exist in multiple realities simultaneously. This conversation is happening in 17 different dimensions right now. The concepts were too large for Vexmoth's mind to hold. She had thought of herself as advanced, as wise, as superior to young species like humanity. Now she felt like a primitive creature trying to understand mathematics. Why did you save us? She asked. We rejected you. We called you children. We refused to treat you as equals. Captain Soo-jin looked out at the stars for a long moment before answering. Because it was the right thing to do. The Devourers would have killed billions of innocent people. We do not let people die just because their leaders make bad decisions. But surely you want something in return: revenge, apologies, recognition of your superiority. Soo-jin smiled. It was the first emotion she had shown during their entire meeting. We do not need your recognition anymore. We know who we are. She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Most of it was marked in the chaotic colors that represented the broken remains of the old council system. But spreading outward from Sol's system, new colors were appearing, green zones that represented something different. "We are offering a new arrangement," Sujin explained. "Any world or system that wants to join the Terran Confederation is welcome. We share technology, knowledge, and protection. In return, members contribute what they can and respect the rights of all sentient beings." "What about the Council?" Vexmoth asked. "The Council can join if it wants to, or it can continue trying to govern the old way. We will not force anyone to change." Vexmoth studied the holographic map. The green zones were growing rapidly. Dozens of star systems were already switching to the Human Confederation. More were asking to join every day. "What if we had said yes 5 years ago?" she asked quietly. "What if we had offered you that council seat you wanted?" Sujin considered the question seriously. "Then you would have trapped us in your limited thinking. You would have made us smaller to fit into your system. We would have spent our energy trying to make you happy instead of becoming who we were meant to be." She touched a control, and the holographic display changed to show Earth as it was now. The planet was beautiful beyond description. Cities that floated in the air, oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life, mountains that reached into space itself. "Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is forcing them to find their own way," Sujin continued. "You rejected us because you thought we were not good enough. That rejection made us realize we did not need to be good enough for you. We only needed to be good enough for ourselves." Over the following weeks, Chancellor Vexmoth worked with the human delegation to create the new Terra Accords. The old Galactic Council would be dissolved. Species that wanted to join the Terran Confederation would be welcomed as equals. Those that preferred independence would be respected and protected. The signing ceremony took place on New Geneva I, space station that existed in normal space and 11 other dimensions simultaneously. Representatives from 300 species attended. Many were former council members who had spent years looking down on humanity. Now they lined up to sign documents that made them junior partners in humanity's new galactic order. Boram O had been elected as the final chancellor of the old council. Her job was to formally transfer authority to the new system. As she signed the accords, she realized the terrible irony of the situation. The council had rejected humanity to preserve their own superiority. But humanity's true superiority had always been their ability to grow and change and become better than they were before. "We were afraid you would drag us down to your level," she said to Captain Sujin during the ceremony. "But we dragged ourselves down by refusing to learn from you." Sujin nodded. "Fear makes everyone smaller. We chose to stop being afraid of what you thought about us. That choice changed everything." As the ceremony ended, the human fleet prepared to return to Sol system. But now they were not traveling alone. Hundreds of alien vessels followed them, carrying delegates and settlers who wanted to be part of humanity's new civilization. The galaxy that had once rejected humans as too young and chaotic was now following them toward a future that none of them could fully imagine. Long-range sensors detected the construction of new cities on Mars, Venus, and the moons of Jupiter. Applications to join the Terran Confederation were arriving from systems across the galaxy.